The massive crystalline structure of the Galactic Council headquarters floated in the void between three dying stars, its transparent walls reflecting the crimson light of cosmic death. Inside the main judgment chamber, Ambassador David Ross stood in the center of a circular platform that glowed with an ominous blue energy. Above him, tier upon tier of alien representatives stretched into the darkness, their various forms creating a nightmare symphony of clicking, humming, and chittering sounds. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. Gravity fields allowed species from different worlds to exist in the same space, while translation matrices converted thousands of alien languages into comprehensible speech. But today, all that advanced technology served one purpose: to judge whether humanity deserved to exist among the stars. High Arbiter Veltar, a being of pure crystallized thought, materialized on the central throne. Her voice resonated through every mind present, bypassing the need for sound entirely. Ambassador Ross of Earth, you stand accused of the most serious crime in galactic law: biological terrorism against civilized worlds. The accusations began immediately. Chancellor Mordak of the Hegemony, a massive creature with 6 arms and skin like living metal, rose from his platform. Wherever humans go, death follows. Your species carries invisible weapons that kill entire populations without warning. The evidence is overwhelming, added Supreme Counselor Yathana, her insectoid form clicking with agitation. 17 worlds have reported massive die-offs after human contact. Billions of lives lost to diseases that appeared from nowhere. Around the chamber, holographic displays materialized showing scenes of devastation. Empty cities on distant worlds, abandoned space stations, entire star systems where nothing moved except the cold wind through dead streets. The images were horrifying, and every alien eye in the chamber focused on them with growing fear and anger. David remained calm, his hands clasped behind his back as he studied the evidence being presented against his species. He had been preparing for this moment since humanity first learned they were not alone in the universe. The truth was far more complex than these aliens could imagine, and infinitely more dangerous. You have seen our evidence, High Arbiter Veltar announced. Humanity's expansion into the galaxy has brought nothing but death and destruction. Your very presence seems to corrupt the natural order of life itself. The chamber erupted in angry voices as representatives from hundreds of species demanded immediate action. Some called for humanity's complete isolation from galactic civilization. Others suggested more extreme measures. The fear in the air was thick enough to taste, and David could see that many of these beings had never encountered anything like the pattern humanity seemed to create wherever they went. The preservation protocols exist for a reason, declared War Marshal Clegton of the Iron Worlds, his mechanical voice cutting through the chaos. No species has the right to spread biological contamination across the galaxy. The punishment for such crimes is clear: complete exile or extermination. A wave of agreement swept through the assembled council. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy nodded, clicked, hummed, or signaled their approval in ways unique to their species. The verdict seemed inevitable, and David could feel the weight of humanity's future pressing down on him like a physical force. But then he smiled. That simple human expression sent a ripple of unease through the chamber. There was something in that smile that suggested the aliens had fundamentally misunderstood what they were dealing with. David stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space despite its normal volume. Honored representatives, he began, you speak of death and destruction as if they are weapons we have chosen to wield. But you have made a critical error in your understanding of what humanity truly is. The chamber fell silent. Even the constant background noise of alien communication systems seemed to hold its breath. You see death following in our wake, and assume we are its masters, David continued. But the truth is far more extraordinary. We are not death's servants or its weapons. We are its greatest students, its most successful survivors, and its most intimate partners in the dance of evolution. High Arbiter Veltar leaned forward on her crystalline throne. Explain yourself, human. David's smile widened, and for the first time since the trial began, he looked truly confident. To understand what you call humanity's crimes, you need to understand what made us possible in the first place. You need to understand our world, our history, and the forge that shaped us into what we are today. He gestured, and his own holographic display activated. showing a blue-green world spinning peacefully in space. Earth looked beautiful and serene from orbit, nothing like the scenes of devastation that had preceded it. "This is Earth," David announced, "our home, and it is the most dangerous laboratory of death and evolution the galaxy has ever produced." The alien representative stirred uneasily. There was something in the human ambassador's tone that suggested they were about to learn things they would rather not know. "For 4 billion years," David continued, "our world has been testing life in ways your most advanced scientists could never imagine. Every form of death you fear, every biological weapon you guard against, every plague that haunts your nightmares, Earth has thrown all of that at life again and again and again." The display began to show Earth's history, massive volcanic eruptions that darkened skies for decades, asteroid impacts that shattered continents, ice ages that froze entire hemispheres, and through it all, the relentless pressure of evolution driving life to adapt, survive, and grow stronger. "You call us biological terrorists," David said, his voice growing stronger, "but we prefer another term. We are Earth's children, and Earth is the galaxy's most effective teacher of survival. What you have witnessed is not destruction. It is education." The chamber erupted in confused chatter as the implications of his words began to sink in. David raised his hand for silence, and remarkably, the vast assembly quieted to hear what else he had to say. "You want to judge humanity for bringing death to your worlds," he concluded. "But first let me tell you about the billions of years of death that brought humanity to you." The holographic display above the judgment chamber transformed into a window through time, showing Earth as it existed billions of years ago. The alien representatives watched in growing amazement as they witnessed a world unlike anything in their experience, a planet where life and death danced together in an endless spiral of creation and destruction. "This is Earth 4 billion years ago," David explained, his voice echoing through the crystalline chamber. "The first lesson you need to understand about my species is that we come from a world that has never known peace, never known stability, and never allowed life to remain unchanged for long." The display showed primordial oceans under a sky filled with toxic gases. Lightning split the atmosphere constantly, while volcanic eruptions painted the horizon in shades of red and orange. It was a vision of hell that made even the most hardened alien warriors shift uncomfortably in their gravity fields. Chancellor Mordak's metallic skin rippled with disturbance. "This is your homeworld? How could any life survive in such conditions?" "That," David replied, "is exactly the question that shaped everything that came after. Life on Earth did not simply survive. It was forced to become something extraordinary." The timeline accelerated, showing the first simple organisms appearing in the hostile seas. But instead of the gradual, peaceful evolution that characterized most worlds, Earth's life faced constant catastrophe. Massive impacts from space, supervolcanic eruptions, dramatic climate shifts. Each event wiped out vast numbers of species. But somehow life always found a way to continue. Supreme Counselor Yathana clicked her mandibles nervously. "We have seen worlds face individual catastrophes, but this is continuous destruction. How could evolution proceed under such conditions?" "That is where Earth differs from every other world you know," David answered. "Your species evolved on stable worlds where gradual change was possible. Earth never offered that luxury. On our world, adaptation had to be rapid, radical, and absolute. Survive the immediate crisis or die. There was no middle ground." The display zoomed in to show the microscopic level, where the real battle for survival was taking place. Primitive bacteria and viruses locked in endless combat, each developing new strategies to overcome the other. It was biological warfare on a scale that dwarfed anything the Galactic Council had ever imagined. "Every Earth organism carries the genetic memory of this 4 billion-year war," David continued. "We are all descendants of the ultimate survivors, the beings that found ways to thrive in conditions that would sterilize most worlds." High Arbiter Veltar's crystalline form flickered with confusion. "But Ambassador, you speak of primitive organisms. What does this have to do with the diseases that follow your species?" David's expression grew more serious. "Because those primitive organisms never stopped fighting. They continued to evolve, continued to adapt, continued to create new ways to survive and spread. And when complex life like my species finally emerged, we had to learn to live alongside them." The holographic display shifted to show the human body at the cellular level. But instead of the clean, organized biological systems the aliens expected, they saw something that resembled a battlefield. Immune cells patrol like soldiers, antibodies hunting foreign invaders, and throughout it all, a constant low-level war between the human host and countless microscopic organisms. "This is the truth about humanity," David announced. "We are not just individuals, we are walking ecosystems. Every human carries within their body more bacterial cells than human cells. We are living planets complete with our own atmosphere, weather systems, and biological cycles." The alien representatives stared in horrified fascination. War Marshal Clegton's mechanical voice crackled with disbelief. "You are saying that humans are colonies, symbiotic organisms? We are something far more complex than that," David replied. "We are the end result of Earth's greatest experiment, teaching complex life to work in partnership with the very forces that once threatened to destroy it." The display now showed the human immune system in action, revealing a level of sophistication that amazed the watching aliens. T-cells that could recognize and remember millions of different threats, antibodies that could adapt in real time to new challenges, and genetic switches that could activate defenses against dangers the body had never encountered before. "Every human immune system is more complex than most of your planetary defense networks," David explained. "We carry within us the accumulated wisdom of 4 billion years of biological warfare. Our bodies remember every plague, every virus, every bacterial invasion that our ancestors survived." "But how do you control such forces?" asked Dr. Zephyrus of the Medical Alliance, her tentacles writhing with scientific curiosity. "Surely such biological activity would kill the host organism." David smiled grimly. "Control is the wrong word. We do not control these forces. We have learned to dance with them. Earth taught us that the only way to survive in a universe full of hostile life is to become partners with that hostility." The holographic display shifted again, showing human history from a biological perspective. Plagues that swept across continents, killing millions but leaving survivors with new resistances. Diseases that jumped from animals to humans, forcing rapid evolutionary adaptations. Environmental challenges that pushed human populations to develop new biological capabilities. "You see death and destruction in our wake," David said, his voice growing stronger. "But what you are really seeing is Earth's teaching method spreading to new worlds. We do not bring diseases to your planets. We bring the evolutionary pressure that creates stronger life." The chamber erupted in confused chatter. The concept was so alien to their experience that many representatives struggled to comprehend what the human ambassador was telling them. High Arbiter Veltar raised her hand for silence. "Are you claiming that the deaths on 17 worlds were educational?" "I am claiming that those deaths were inevitable," David replied without hesitation. "Life stagnates without pressure. Your species have lived on stable worlds for so long that you have forgotten the fundamental truth of existence. Adapt or die." He gestured to the assembly around him. "Look at yourselves. When was the last time any of your species faced a real evolutionary challenge? When did you last need to develop new biological capabilities to survive? You have been living in a garden while we come from a forge." The implications hit the alien representatives like a physical blow. They began to understand that humanity was not simply another spacefaring species. They were the products of a fundamentally different kind of world, shaped by forces that most galactic civilizations had never encountered. "The deaths on those 17 worlds," David continued, "were not caused by weapons or intent. They were caused by the simple fact that when Earth's children encounter life that has never been tested, that life is not prepared for the challenges we represent." Supreme Counselor Yathana's voice trembled as she spoke. "You are saying that your mere presence is enough to wake up the universe," David finished. "To remind all life that evolution never stops, adaptation never ends, and the dance between life and death continues whether you participate willingly or not." The chamber fell into stunned silence as the aliens began to grasp the true scope of what they were dealing with. Humanity was not just another species to be judged. They were a force of nature that had been unleashed upon a galaxy unprepared for their arrival. The silence in the judgment chamber stretched until it became almost unbearable. Then Chancellor Mordak stood on his platform, his 6 metallic arms clenching with visible tension. "Ambassador Ross, you speak in riddles and philosophy. Give us facts. What exactly happens when humans visit other worlds? David nodded slowly as if he had been expecting this question. Very well. Let me show you the biological reality of human contact. The holographic display shifted to show a detailed cross-section of a human body, but this time the focus was on the invisible passengers that traveled with every member of humanity. The alien representatives gasped as they saw the true scale of what each human carried. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, one of our xenobiologists, David announced as the display focused on a woman in a laboratory coat. She appears to be a single organism, but in reality, she's a walking ecosystem containing over 100 trillion individual life forms. The display zoomed deeper, revealing the microscopic universe that existed within every human. Bacteria colonies in the digestive system that were more numerous than stars in some galaxies. Viral particles that had integrated themselves into human DNA over millions of years of coevolution. Fungal networks that helped process nutrients and maintain biological balance. Dr. Zephyrus of the Medical Alliance recoiled in horror. That level of biological contamination should kill any complex organism instantly. Contamination is your word, not ours, David replied calmly. We call it partnership. Every one of these microscopic organisms serves a purpose in maintaining human health and function. We do not simply carry them, we depend on them. The holographic display showed the intricate relationships between human cells and their microscopic partners. Beneficial bacteria that produced essential vitamins, viral DNA that had become part of the human immune system, and complex chemical communications that maintained the balance of the entire biological community. War Marshal Clegton's mechanical voice buzzed with disbelief. How is such a system possible? The computational complexity alone should overwhelm any biological organism. That is where Earth's 4 billion years of training becomes apparent, David answered. Human biology is not based on control or domination of these microscopic partners. It is based on negotiation, cooperation, and mutual benefit. We are living democracies where trillions of organisms vote every second on how to maintain our health. The display shifted to show what happened when humans traveled to other worlds. As Dr. Vasquez stepped off a transport ship onto an alien planet, the visualization revealed the cloud of microscopic life that accompanied her. It was like watching a biological storm system make landfall. When humans arrive on a new world, David explained, we do not simply bring ourselves, we bring Earth's entire microscopic ecosystem with us. Every breath we exhale contains thousands of organisms. Every surface we touch receives genetic material that has been refined by billions of years of evolutionary pressure. High Arbiter Veltar leaned forward on her crystalline throne. And this is what causes the deaths on other worlds? Not directly, David replied. The deaths occur because most galactic life has never encountered this level of biological complexity. Your species evolved on worlds where microscopic life was simple, predictable, and easily controlled. You have immune systems designed for peace, not war. The holographic display now showed the aftermath of human contact on one of the affected worlds. But instead of the simple plague scenario the aliens had imagined, they saw something far more complex. Native organisms were not just dying, they were changing, adapting, evolving at unprecedented rates. Look more carefully at your evidence, David urged. Yes, there are deaths, but there is also something else happening. New forms of life are emerging. Existing organisms are developing capabilities they never had before. Evolution itself is accelerating. Supreme Counselor Yithana studied the displays with growing alarm. You are saying that human contact forces rapid evolutionary change in other species? I am saying that human contact introduces other species to Earth's teaching methods, David corrected. The microscopic organisms we carry do not simply invade other life forms. They share genetic information, challenge existing biological systems, and force adaptation or extinction. The chamber erupted in frightened chatter as the implications became clear. Chancellor Mordek demanded silence before speaking again. This is biological warfare on a scale we never imagined. You are weaponizing evolution itself. We are not weaponizing anything, David responded firmly. We are simply sharing what Earth taught us. The universe is not a safe place. Cosmic radiation, stellar events, planetary changes. All of these forces constantly challenge life throughout the galaxy. Earth prepared us for these challenges by creating a biological system that can adapt to anything. The display showed examples from Earth's history. Human populations surviving in environments that should have been lethal, adapting to new diseases in single generations. developing resistances to toxins and radiation that would kill most galactic species instantly. Every human carries the genetic legacy of survivors, David continued. We are the descendants of individuals who lived through ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and plagues that killed 90% of all life on Earth. Our biological systems are designed to survive anything the universe can create. Dr. Zephyrus tentacle waved frantically. But what about the species that cannot adapt quickly enough? What about the civilizations that are destroyed by these educational processes? David's expression grew somber. That is the hard truth that Earth taught us long ago. In a universe full of genuine dangers, stellar radiation, cosmic events, environmental changes, only the adaptable survive. We did not create these rules. We simply learned to live by them. The holographic display shifted to show the broader galactic picture. Peaceful worlds where life had remained unchanged for millions of years. Species that had achieved technological advancement but biological stagnation. Entire star systems where the same organisms had existed in the same forms since before humans had even evolved. You have built a galaxy based on the assumption that stability equals safety, David observed. But stability is an illusion. The universe is constantly changing, and life that cannot change with it is doomed to extinction. We are not bringing death to your worlds. We are bringing the wake-up call that might save them from something far worse. High Arbiter Veltar's crystalline form flickered with uncertainty. What could be worse than the biological chaos you describe? David gestured to the cosmic background visible through the chamber's transparent walls. Out there, beyond the boundaries of galactic civilization, real dangers exist. Stellar phenomena that sterilize entire systems. Cosmic events that alter the fundamental chemistry of worlds. When those forces arrive, and they will arrive, which species do you think will survive? Those that have learned to adapt rapidly to biological challenges, or those that have lived in protective isolation for millions of years? The question hung in the air like a sword above the assembled representatives. For the first time since the trial began, the aliens were forced to consider that humanity might not be their greatest threat, but potentially their only hope for survival in a universe far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. We are not asking for your forgiveness, David concluded. We are offering you the most valuable gift Earth ever gave us, the ability to change, to adapt, and to survive whatever the universe decides to throw at us next. The judgment chamber had become a cauldron of fear and confusion. Representatives from hundreds of species argued among themselves in languages that made the translation systems strain to keep up. Some demanded immediate action against humanity, while others began to question everything they thought they knew about life in the galaxy. High Arbiter Veltar called for order, her crystalline form pulsing with authority. Ambassador Ross, you have presented a disturbing picture of your species and its effects on galactic civilization. But you have not answered the fundamental question. What do you expect us to do with this information? David looked around the vast chamber, meeting the eyes and optical sensors of beings from across the galaxy. I expect you to make a choice. You can try to contain humanity and hope that isolation will protect you from the changes we represent. Or you can accept that those changes are already underway and decide how you want to adapt to them. Chancellor Mordak's metallic skin shifted to a darker hue. You speak as if we have already been infected by your presence. Infected is your word, David replied. I would say awakened. In the 3 years since humanity joined galactic civilization, we have visited over 800 worlds, established trade relationships with 200 species, and exchanged cultural information with thousands of your communities. The holographic display activated again, showing a real-time map of the galaxy with human contact points highlighted in blue. The pattern was stunning in its scope. Tendrils of blue light stretched across vast distances, connecting worlds that had never experienced rapid biological change. Every one of those contact points represents an exchange, David explained, not just of goods or information, but of biological material. Microscopic organisms, genetic information, evolutionary pressure, all flowing outward from Earth through the networks of galactic commerce and diplomacy. Dr. Zephyrus spoke in a trembling voice. Are you saying that the contamination, the awakening, has already spread throughout the galaxy? I am saying that the process of galactic evolution has begun, David answered, and it cannot be stopped. The display zoomed in on several worlds that had experienced human contact years earlier. Instead of the devastation the aliens expected, they saw something extraordinary. Native species were displaying new capabilities, developing resistances to diseases that had plagued them for millennia, and showing unprecedented rates of adaptation to environmental challenges. The Altarian fever that killed millions of your people every year, David pointed to one world, has not appeared since human medical teams visited your planet 2 years ago. Not because we brought a cure, but because your population's immune systems learned to recognize and defeat it. Supreme Counselor Yathana clicked her mandibles rapidly. That is impossible. Evolutionary adaptation requires thousands of years, not a few seasons. Unstable worlds, yes, David agreed. But when exposed to Earth's biological teaching methods, evolution accelerates dramatically. Your people were carrying the genetic potential to defeat that disease all along. They just needed the right pressure to activate it. The holographic display shifted to show the Cathari homeworld, where similar changes were occurring. Insectoid creatures that had been vulnerable to solar radiation for millions of years were suddenly developing natural protections. Plants that had never been able to process certain soil nutrients were adapting within single growing seasons. War Marshal Clegton stood abruptly on his platform. This is not evolution, this is biological terrorism on a galactic scale. You have contaminated our entire civilization without consent or warning. We have shared with your civilization what Earth shared with us, David corrected. The knowledge that life can be stronger, more adaptable, more resilient than you ever imagined. The choice of what to do with that knowledge is yours. The chamber erupted in angry voices, but High Arbiter Veltar's mental command cut through the chaos like a blade. Silence. Let the ambassador finish. David nodded gratefully before continuing. You are angry because change is frightening. Your species have lived in biological stability for so long that you have forgotten how to grow. But growth is the natural state of life. Stagnation is death by another name. The display now showed projections of what the galaxy might look like in the coming decades. Species that embraced the changes becoming stronger and more capable than they had ever been. Worlds that had been marginal for life becoming garden planets as organisms adapted to make use of previously hostile environments. But there is another possibility, David said, his tone growing darker. Species that refuse to adapt, that try to maintain their biological isolation, will find themselves increasingly vulnerable to the real dangers of the universe. The projection shifted to show cosmic threats that existed beyond the galaxy's borders. Stellar phenomena that could sterilize worlds, cosmic radiation that could mutate entire ecosystems, and other dangers that most galactic civilizations had never encountered because they had never ventured far enough from their safe worlds. Earth sits on the edge of our galaxy, David explained, where cosmic dangers are more common. We have learned to survive threats that most of you cannot even imagine. The biological flexibility that frightens you is the same capability that allows us to adapt to environments that would kill normal galactic life instantly. Dr. Zephyrus spoke hesitantly. Are you suggesting that humanity's gifts could help us survive external threats? I am suggesting that those external threats are coming whether you are prepared for them or not, David replied grimly. Our astronomers have detected cosmic phenomena approaching from outside the galaxy. Radiation storms that will test every world's biological resilience. When those arrive, which species do you think will survive? Those that have learned to adapt rapidly or those that have remained biologically static for millions of years? The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The aliens had been so focused on the immediate effects of human contact that they had not considered the larger picture. Humanity was not just changing their galaxy, they were preparing it for challenges that lay ahead. Chancellor Mordak's voice was subdued when he finally spoke. How long do we have before these external threats arrive? David consulted a data display on his wrist device. Our best estimates suggest between 50 and 100 standard years. Enough time for willing species to adapt and strengthen themselves, but not enough time for gradual evolutionary change. High Arbiter Veltar leaned back on her crystalline throne, her form flickering with the strain of processing this information. So our choice is to accept rapid biological change now, or face extinction later. Your choice, David said quietly, is to embrace the gift that Earth learned to give 4 billion years ago. The gift of endless adaptation, infinite resilience, and the courage to change when change is necessary for survival. He looked around the chamber one more time, seeing fear and uncertainty in every alien face. We did not ask to be Earth's children. We did not choose to carry its lessons to the galaxy. But we are here now, and those lessons are spreading whether you welcome them or not. The only question is whether you will learn from them willingly, or wait until the universe forces you to learn the hard way. The judgment chamber had become very quiet, filled only with the sound of thousands of alien minds struggling to comprehend a future they had never imagined. One where change was not just possible, but necessary for survival. The debate that followed David's revelation lasted for 3 full Galactic Standard days. Representatives argued, pleaded, threatened, and bargained as they struggled to comprehend the magnitude of the choice before them. Some species demanded immediate quarantine of all human-contacted worlds. Others called for humanity's complete expulsion from galactic civilization. But a growing number began to ask different questions. Dr. Zephyrus was the first to speak when the formal session resumed. Ambassador Ross, assuming we accept your perspective on these events, what would cooperation with humanity look like? How would willing species participate in this biological awakening? David had been waiting for this question. The same way life on Earth learned to cooperate with evolutionary pressure, through partnership rather than resistance. Species that work with the changes, that study and understand them, will be able to guide their own adaptation, rather than simply being overwhelmed by it. The holographic display activated to show successful examples from human-contacted worlds. On Kepler 442b, the native crystalline collective had initially panicked when their silicon-based life forms began showing unexpected changes. But after working with human xenobiologists, they discovered that the changes were allowing them to process energy more efficiently than ever before. The collective's energy output has increased by 300%, David explained. They can now survive in environments that would have been lethal to them before human contact. Instead of seeing this as contamination, they chose to see it as evolution. Supreme Counselor Yathana leaned forward with interest. And species that resist the changes. David's expression grew somber. The Vorlak Empire chose complete biological isolation after human contact. They sterilized every surface, filtered every breath, and maintained perfect genetic purity. The display showed a stark comparison. While neighboring species grew stronger and more adaptable, the Vorlak had remained exactly as they were. 6 months ago, a solar flare event struck their system, David continued. Radiation levels that the adapted neighboring species survived easily proved lethal to over 60% of the Vorlak population. Their biological purity became their weakness when faced with a real cosmic threat. The chamber buzzed with uneasy conversation. War Marshal Clegton stood slowly on his platform. You are describing a fundamental change in the nature of galactic civilization. If we accept your proposal, nothing will ever be the same. Nothing will ever be the same regardless of what you decide, David replied. The question is whether you will shape that change or be shaped by it. High Arbiter Veltar had been silent through most of the debate. Her crystalline form dimmed as she processed the unprecedented decision before the Council. Finally, she spoke. The Galactic Council has never faced a situation like this. We have protocols for war, for disease, for natural disasters, but we have no protocol for evolution itself becoming a conscious choice. Then perhaps it is time to create new protocols, suggested Chancellor Mordek, his metallic skin now showing patterns that indicated deep thought rather than anger. Ambassador Ross, if the Council were to accept humanity's role in these changes, what guarantees could you offer that the process would remain beneficial rather than destructive? David considered the question carefully. The same guarantee that Earth gave our ancestors, none. Evolution is not a safe process. It requires risk, change, and the possibility of failure. But the alternative to taking that risk is eventual stagnation and death when real challenges arise. However, he continued, humanity is willing to share everything we have learned about managing biological change. Our medical knowledge, our adaptation techniques, our methods for maintaining stability while allowing growth. We can be guides rather than simply catalysts. Dr. Zephyrus spoke up again. What about species that are physically unable to adapt quickly enough? Not all galactic life forms have the biological flexibility to survive rapid change. That is where human partnership becomes most valuable, David answered. We have techniques for accelerating beneficial adaptations while minimizing harmful ones. Genetic therapies that can activate dormant evolutionary pathways. Biological supplements that can bridge the gap between old and new systems. Medical interventions that can ease the transition process. The holographic display showed examples of these techniques in action. Species that had been helped through difficult adaptation periods. Worlds where human medical teams had prevented the worst effects of biological change while allowing the beneficial aspects to flourish. But these methods require trust, David warned. Species that see us as invaders rather than partners will have much more difficulty navigating the changes successfully. High Arbiter Veltar finally stood on her crystalline throne, her form brightening as she reached a decision. The Council will vote on 3 options. First, complete isolation of humanity and quarantine of all affected worlds. Second, conditional acceptance of human integration with strict monitoring and control measures. Third, full partnership with humanity in what Ambassador Ross calls the Galactic Awakening. The voting process took hours as representatives consulted with their home governments across vast distances. When the results were finally announced, the chamber fell silent. Isolation, 2,412 votes. Conditional acceptance, 3,897 votes. Full partnership, 5,691 votes. A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. Against all expectations, a majority of galactic civilization had chosen to embrace the changes rather than resist them. David felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he had been carrying since humanity first learned they were not alone in the universe. The galaxy has chosen wisely. Earth's children are honored to share what we have learned about survival, adaptation, and growth. High Arbiter Veltar's voice carried a note of ceremonial finality. Let it be recorded that on this day, galactic civilization chose evolution over stagnation, growth over safety, and partnership over isolation. The age of biological awakening has begun. As the session concluded and representatives began making plans to return to their homeworlds with news of the historic decision, David remained in the center of the chamber. Around him, the vast structure that had once seemed designed to judge humanity now felt like the birthplace of something entirely new. Through the transparent walls, he could see the 3 dying stars that provided light for the council headquarters. Soon those stars would go nova, ending their ancient cycle. But the galaxy they illuminated was no longer the same one that had existed when the hearings began. Humanity had brought Earth's greatest gift to the stars, not weapons or technology, but the fundamental truth that life's greatest strength lay not in remaining the same, but in its infinite capacity to become something more. The Grim Reaper that aliens had feared was not death at all. It was the promise that nothing would ever have to die unchanged, that every ending could become a new beginning, and that life itself would never stop reaching toward possibilities that had never existed before. The galaxy had declared its choice. The age of evolution had begun,